you saw Mayor Bloomberg talking about Hillary Clinton. At that same conference where Chris Christie was, Bill Clinton was there, and they asked him about Karl Rove's remarks. Here's what he said.
First they said she faked her concussion, and now they say she's auditioning for a part on The Walking Dead. And there's nothing to it. I was sort of dumbfounded. They went to all this trouble to say that she had staged what was a terrible concussion that required 6 months of very serious work to get over. Something she never lowballed with the American people, never tried to pretend didn't happen.
You know, the news there really, which kind of got overlooked, is he said it took 6 months to overcome this. This was, up until this point, we were talking about it took a month or so to recover.
Right. That was not the official story, and it's still hard now to get a story following up on that. And that's what's interesting about this response, and what seems to be different from what we've heard from the Clinton camp before here is they responded in a way that suggested there was a future political narrative that they needed to manage. They needed to say that this was in the context of all these crazy attacks on Hillary Clinton. And Bill Clinton also said something. He said, well, they'll get better at it. In other words, they'll have a chance to get better at it because she's going to keep being in the public light, presumably in a political context. But then when you tried to follow up on the 6 months question, they shut it down just like we were already in a campaign, and they weren't going to tell you any more than the specific message they wanted to tell you.
But my sense is that Karl Rove did him a favor by doing it this way. I mean, they're going to have to address the health issue in the long run. Obviously, everybody knows that. But he managed to do it in such a way that Democrats were angry, Republicans were criticizing him, and Mayor Bloomberg, an independent, said it was outrageous. So, I mean, if you're going to have to raise the issue, you probably ought to have done it in a more artful way than this.
Yeah, and I was there with you, Bob, and I thought in the president's words, in President Clinton's words, you sort of felt like even though he was making light of this, and he was prepared for those questions, he seemed like you could hear in that sort of his advice to his own wife, like, don't let this get to you. It's we know this is going to come. It's going to even get worse, but just the answer is to show humor.
We've seen the Karl Rove pretty despicable, sleazy playbook before. This is not shocking. He sort of operates on the Mark Twain theory that lies halfway around the world before truth gets its boots on. I think Gerald is right that it probably helps Hillary Clinton and her not yet announced campaign. But I think John Dickerson wrote something a few days ago. What we're looking at is a possible political, never seen a political party nominee uncontested in over 100 years, uncontested. And I think that plays a role. Karl Rove and others are in panic, but it also hurts her in a way if you don't have others running. Not only does this country get deprived of fresh ideas and new approaches, but she's going to become the target of all of the Republicans' sleazy tricks.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking the other day, I mean, I assume that she's going to run, and the assumption is every reporter's worst enemy, and I know that from experience. I assume she's going to run, but if she doesn't run, who will the Democratic nominee? Who's going to run?
Well, let me just say, at The Nation, we have a series where we are determined, because we don't believe presidential campaigns should be spectator sports. Citizens should define the character and content of the elections, to identify others who might run, whether it's Governor O'Malley, Governor Gerry Brown, Senator Warren, Senator Bernie Sanders. And I think there's a value in that, because I think, and we saw this with the Obama-Clinton race, a candidate is better served if he or she is tested in a primary. That's not to say we're anti-Hillary, though, but we want to have a debate in this country, not a coronation.
You know, we've all at this table been through this before. In late 2006, she was being described as the certain candidate, the inevitable nominee. And we saw how that worked out. And and today Dan Balls in the Washington Post has a column based on an interview with Senator Bernie Sanders that Katrina mentioned, and he's saying that he's thinking of running, not that he thinks he would win, but because he thinks, I jotted it down, that he doesn't think Hillary Clinton would be confront Wall Street and the quote-unquote billionaire class, and so he wants that point of view to be reflected. He didn't mention, the column didn't mention Elizabeth Warren much, but that's I think she would run if Hillary did not run.